When this happens, every person on Earth will hear it at the same moment. No phone, no broadcast, no internet required. There are 5 things about this event that almost nobody understands correctly. Most people picture it wrong. The location is wrong. The timing signs are wrong. Even the sound itself, people picture it wrong. By the end of this video, you'll know what actually happens, in what order, and how close the signs say we already are. Let's start with the first thing almost everyone gets wrong, where it actually happens. Ask 10 people where they think this happens. Most will say the same thing. Everywhere. All at once. Up in the sky. All over the world. It sounds right. It is not. Here's why. The claim is not that a feeling arrives, or a presence, or a light in your heart. The claim is that a body returns. A real, physical body. And a body can only be in one place. Think about your own body right now. You are not in 2 rooms at the same time. You cannot be at your kitchen table and in your car in the same second. A body picks one spot. It always has to. So if this is a body coming back, that body has to land somewhere specific. One address. One spot on the map. Which spot? Not Washington. Not London. Not Rome. Not any city you would guess first. The location points back to one place. Jerusalem. The same city this figure is said to have left from in the first place. Here's where it gets strange. The book of Acts describes the departure happening from a hillside outside that city, with witnesses watching it happen in real time. And the same passage says the return will happen the same way, in reverse, in the same location. The departure point becomes the arrival point. Now here is the problem nobody talks about. If the location is fixed, one city, one spot on Earth, and the people waiting for this event are scattered across every continent, every time zone, every ocean away, how does that work? You cannot fit 2 billion people into one small hillside. There is not a stadium on this planet big enough. Not close. So either the story has a hole in it, or there is a piece we have not gotten to yet. Hold on to that. It gets answered later, and the answer is stranger than the problem. For now, here's what matters. This is not a vague, floaty, everywhere at once kind of event. It is fixed to a real place, on a real map, with real geography. Jerusalem sits at a specific latitude and longitude. You could put a pin in it right now. And that detail, fixed location, physical body, specific coordinates, is the first thing that separates this from a fairy tale. It is also the first thing that should make you lean in. Because if the location is this specific, what about everything else? What about the timing? Turns out, there is supposed to be a countdown. Signs that show up first, one after another, like a train you can hear coming before you ever see it. And according to this, the first sign on that list may have already started. Picture the first time this figure showed up on Earth. No crowd, no announcement, no grand entrance. A baby, born in a small town most people had never heard of, grew up working with his hands, walked through ordinary streets. People passed him without a second glance. Nothing about him stood out. Whatever you have seen in old paintings, the glowing circle of light around his head that was added later by artists. The people who actually lived alongside him saw nothing like that. No glow, no light show, just an ordinary face in an ordinary crowd. That was the first arrival. Quiet, hidden, easy to miss completely. The second one is supposed to be the exact opposite. Everything that was hidden the first time gets uncovered the second time. Everything that was quiet gets loud. Everything that was small gets impossible to miss. The writers who described this reached for words they had never used before. 3 words, to be exact. One word meant arrival, but not a casual one. It was the word used in the ancient world when a king showed up in a city or when an army arrived to take over. A word that meant everything is about to change. A second word meant appearing, the kind of moment when royalty finally steps out where the waiting crowd can see them. Think of a balcony, doors opening, and a roar going up from everyone below. A third word meant uncovering, like pulling a curtain back. Nothing hidden left, seen exactly as it is. Put those 3 words together and you get a very different picture than a baby in a manger. Here's a detail that makes this feel less like a story and more like a forecast. The same account that describes this figure leaving Earth says he will return the same way he left, meaning through clouds, in the sky, visible to those watching. And in that part of the world, clouds do not show up randomly. They show up when wind blows in from the west, off the Mediterranean Sea. Wind from any other direction comes from the desert, dry, with no clouds at all. So buried inside this old description is something oddly specific, a wind direction. West. That is not the kind of detail you find in a vague myth. That is the kind of detail you find in a weather report. Which raises a bigger question. If this event has actual weather, an actual location, and an actual visible appearance, how would anyone know when it's getting close? Turns out, there is supposed to be a countdown. Not a date, a sequence. And the first marker in that sequence is something you may have already felt without realizing what it meant. The followers who first heard about this asked the obvious question. How will we know it's getting close? They got an answer. And the answer did not start in a temple or a church. It started somewhere much bigger, out in the wider world. 3 things were named, all happening at once. Wars, famines, earthquakes, nations rising against nations, food running short in one region after another. The ground itself shaking in places it had not shaken before. Here's the detail that should catch your attention. Researchers who track global conflict and famine going back across the last century have noted that both have increased compared to earlier periods, not just in a few countries, but broadly. You do not need to comb through data to feel that something about this era feels less stable than the one your grandparents lived through. Most people who watch a world like that reach for the same 6 words. I don't know what's coming next. This account says the opposite. It calls these events the beginning, not the ending. That word choice matters more than it looks. The original language used for these events is the word for labor pains. Birth pains, not death pains. Sit with that difference for a second. A body in pain from dying and a body in pain from giving birth can look almost identical from the outside. Same groaning, same struggle, but the reason is completely different. One is an ending. The other is the run-up to something arriving. A shaking world, in this telling, is not a body falling apart. It is closer to a body in labor. But there is a danger hiding inside this first sign, and it is not the shaking itself. When the ground is unstable and people are scared, they start looking for someone, anyone, who can make it stop. That fear creates an opening. And into that opening step people who are happy to say, I'm the one you've been waiting for. Follow me. This has happened in every single decade, in one form or another. Some of them have been alarmingly convincing. So the real danger of this first sign isn't the earthquake. It's the man who shows up right after it, offering to be the answer. That's the first marker. Shaking ground, falling nations, headlines. But the next marker doesn't show up out in the world at all. It shows up somewhere much closer to home. The second marker doesn't appear in the news. It appears inside the church itself. And like the first one, it comes in pieces. The first piece is pressure. A rising squeeze on people of faith, not in one isolated country, but spreading more broadly across regions. If you live somewhere comfortable, this might sound exaggerated. Maybe nothing around you looks like persecution. No soldiers, no prison cells. But pressure doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a slow squeeze, a little less room each year, a little more pushback, a little more cost to speaking openly. Think about how this usually starts in a place where things look fine on the surface. It rarely begins with raids or arrests. It begins smaller than that. A workplace policy that makes faith inconvenient to mention. A social cost to certain beliefs that didn't used to exist 10 years ago. None of it dramatic enough to make headlines on its own. All of it adding up over time. Organizations that track this around the world, like Open Doors, publish an annual list ranking the countries where practicing this faith carries the highest personal risk. Year over year, that list has not been shrinking. It has been growing. So what does pressure do to people? According to this account, pressure sorts people. It separates the ones who were only ever showing up out of habit from the ones who actually meant it. That sounds like bad news. It is supposed to be the opposite. Think of it less like a punishment and more like a filter. Calm water lets everything float, the heavy and the light alike. Rough water only keeps the things that actually have weight to them. Pressure works the same way on belief. It doesn't create the difference between real and surface-level faith. It just reveals a difference that was already there, hidden underneath calm conditions. Because right alongside that pressure, this same message is described as reaching every nation on earth, not despite the pressure, but partly because of it. A tested, refined group can carry a message further than a comfortable one ever could. Here's where it gets specific again, disturbingly specific. There's a real organization, founded back in 1987, located in the Old Walled section of Jerusalem. Its entire stated purpose is to prepare every object a future temple would need, finished, ready, sitting in storage. Not drawings, not models. According to their own published materials, the actual items. A gold-covered lampstand, woven priestly garments, a breastplate set with 12 stones, an altar built so it can be assembled fast the moment it's needed, even a set of trumpets, forged and waiting. By their own account, the only thing missing is the actual ground to put it on. And that detail, the one missing piece, turns out to be the most explosive part of this entire story. Let's slow down on that last detail, because it matters more than it sounds like. This organization isn't hiding. It isn't some secret group operating out of a basement. It has a public location a few minutes' walk from one of the most visited religious sites on Earth, the Western Wall in Jerusalem's Old City. Step inside, and behind protective glass, you'll find a lampstand covered in gold, estimated by the organization itself at somewhere around 45 kilograms of gold. Nearby, in climate-controlled cases, sit woven garments designed to match ancient descriptions of priestly clothing down to the smallest detail. There's a breastplate set with 12 different gemstones, one for each tribe described in ancient Israelite history. A golden altar built for incense, a table designed to hold ceremonial bread, and there are trumpets, silver ones, built and waiting. It's worth picturing what it would actually feel like to walk through that building as a regular visitor. Most tourists in that part of Jerusalem are focused on the Western Wall itself, a few minutes away, down a quieter side street. This building doesn't announce itself with much fanfare. But once you're inside, looking at gold and silver objects built to exact ancient specifications, it stops feeling like a museum exhibit about the past. It starts feeling like a stockroom for something that hasn't happened yet. Here is the part that should genuinely surprise you. The altar isn't just sitting there as a museum piece. It was deliberately engineered to come apart and go back together quickly, so that if it were ever needed, nothing would cause a delay. This organization has also been quietly training men they believe carry the bloodline tied to ancient priestly duties. By their own account, the objects are finished. The training is underway. The only thing they cannot manufacture in a workshop is the location itself. That location is a flat stretch of raised ground in the middle of Jerusalem, known as the Temple Mount. And right now, on that exact ground, sit two of the most significant religious sites in the entire Islamic world. Which means the one missing piece in this whole picture isn't a missing object. It's a question of which structure gets to occupy a single patch of land that multiple faiths consider sacred. That tension alone could fill an entire video on its own. It touches international law, decades of regional conflict, and three major world religions that all trace some part of their history back to that same small stretch of ground. None of that gets resolved in a workshop, no matter how many gold objects sit finished and waiting in storage nearby. But for the purposes of this countdown, here's what matters. The objects are ready. The training is happening. The only unresolved variable left is the ground. And while that unresolved piece sits there, waiting, there's one more marker left in this sequence. The last one. And it doesn't happen on the ground at all. It happens in the sky. Picture standing outside at night and looking up. Now imagine, one by one, every light up there switching off. That is the last marker in this sequence, and it is described happening in a very specific order. The sun goes dark first, then the moon stops giving light, then the stars themselves go out. Not a sunset, not an eclipse, where the light comes back a few minutes later. A full, deliberate shutdown. Every natural light source in the sky, gone at once. Think about what that would actually look like from the ground. No moonlight, no starlight, no glow on the horizon. Total, complete darkness, the kind most people living in cities have honestly never experienced even once. Most of us have never actually seen real darkness. Streetlights take care of that. Phone screens take care of that. Even on a clear night out in the country, there's almost always some light somewhere. A porch light, a distant farmhouse, the moon itself. This description removes all of it. Every single source. At the same time, try to sit with that for a second instead of rushing past it. No moon. No stars, no glow anywhere on the horizon, in any direction, no matter how long you wait for your eyes to adjust. Because there's nothing left for your eyes to adjust to. There's a reason this detail keeps getting described in terms of light rather than something more abstract. Light is the one thing every single person on Earth depends on without thinking about it. You have never once had to ask whether the sun would come up. It just does. Every account of every day you've ever lived assumes that one fact in the background. This marker removes that assumption completely, even if only for a short stretch of time. Then, and only after every light is gone, something happens fast, described as a flash crossing the sky from one side to the other, instantly, the way lightning does. Here's what's strange about this particular marker compared to the earlier ones. The first marker, the shaking world, came with a danger, false voices stepping into the panic. The second marker, pressure on believers, came with a danger too, people drifting away once it cost them something. This last marker comes with no danger attached. None. And the reason is almost unsettling once you think about it. There's no time left to be tricked by anything. By the time every light in the sky has gone out, the moment everything has been building toward is already happening. There's no window left for someone to step in and mislead you. Compare that to the earlier markers. A shaking world gives people years, sometimes decades, to misread it, to attach a false explanation to it, to follow the wrong voice claiming to have the answer. Pressure on believers does the same thing slowly, over a lifetime, wearing people down one decision at a time. This last marker doesn't move slowly. It doesn't give anyone room to misinterpret it while it's happening. There's no gap between the lights switching off and whatever comes right after. Every light switches off so that when the one final light arrives, there is nothing left competing with it. It's the last few seconds before a curtain rises. The lights drop. The room goes completely silent. And then, something breaks that silence. Not a light. Not a flash. Not yet. Something else entirely. Something this whole video has actually been building toward from the very first sentence. It's time to talk about the sound. Here it is. The thing promised at the very start. Out of total darkness, total silence, the first thing that breaks through is not light. It's sound. One ancient letter describes it this way. A shout, the voice of an archangel, and the sound of a trumpet. 3 different sounds, stacked together, happening at once. Read that slowly and notice something. The writer isn't using one description. He's stacking 3 on top of each other, like he's straining to find enough words to hold how loud this actually is. Think about why a writer would do that. If one word was enough, he would have used one word. Stacking 3 sounds on top of each other is what you do when ordinary language keeps falling short. It's the same instinct as someone trying to describe an explosion by comparing it to thunder, then to a freight train, then to something they don't even have a comparison for, because nothing quite fits. Then comes the line that should stop you cold. The dead, it says, rise first. Not as a metaphor, not as poetry. The claim is that this sound is loud enough, real enough, to reach into graves and wake the people buried in them. Think about what that actually means. A sound loud enough to wake the dead isn't loud the way a concert is loud, or the way a jet engine is loud. It's a different category of loud entirely. There's no instrument on Earth that could replicate it. No speaker system built that could come close. Even the loudest sounds ever measured on this planet, volcanic explosions, nuclear tests, the largest man-made blasts in recorded history, were loud enough to damage hearing for miles, sometimes loud enough to be heard across entire oceans. This is described as louder than that, and aimed at a target none of those sounds could ever reach. The inside of a grave. Here's where most people picture this whole moment backward. They picture chaos, horror movie skies, panic. But the same writer who described this sound also wrote something almost tender about the people who had already died before it happened. He told his readers not to grieve for them, not to feel sorry for them, because those people don't miss this moment. They get there first, front row. There's something worth noticing in the choice to comfort people about death at all, in the middle of a passage about the loudest sound in history. It would have been easy to skip that part, to just describe the trumpet and the rising and move on. Instead, the writer pauses specifically to address grief. That suggests the original audience needed that reassurance. They were worried about loved ones who had already died, wondering if those people would somehow miss out. The answer given to them is the opposite of missing out. Then he describes what happens to everyone left alive, caught up together with them, lifted into the air to meet this arriving figure. Remember the travel problem from earlier? One city, one location, but believers scattered across the entire planet? Here's how it gets solved. The meeting point isn't on the ground at all. It's in the air. Nobody has to travel to Jerusalem by road or by plane. Everyone, living and dead together, gets lifted to one shared point above the earth at the same moment. No stadium needed, no flights to book. The whole problem that seemed impossible back in Section 2 disappears the instant you realize the meeting never happens on the ground in the first place. It's worth pausing on how strange that solution actually is. A location fixed to one exact spot on a map, and a meeting that somehow doesn't require anyone to physically travel there. The fixed point and the impossible logistics cancel each other out, but only because the meeting moves to a place no map could ever mark. The air above everywhere, all at once. Now think about the scale of who actually shows up to that meeting point. Current estimates put the global Christian population at somewhere over 2 billion people alive today. Add to that every believer across roughly 2,000 years of history who has already died. Add an uncountable number of angels on top of that. All of them, in one place, in one moment, making sound at the same time. Nobody alive has ever heard anything close to that. Nobody can accurately describe what it would sound like, because nothing in recorded history compares to it. But here's the question almost nobody bothers to ask, even people who believe every part of this story already. If the first arrival already happened, and it already accomplished something, why would a second one even be necessary? That question matters more than it sounds like. And the answer changes how you should think about the entire story. It's a fair question, and most people skip right past it. If this figure already came once, why does there need to be a second arrival at all? Didn't the first visit already accomplish whatever it set out to do? There are three answers, and they build on each other. First, to finish what started. The first arrival, according to this account, dealt with something at the root level. But look around at the actual world. Decay still happens. Death still happens. Things still break down. Whatever the first visit started, the effects of it are still incomplete out here in everyday life. It's a bit like a contractor who fixes the foundation of a house, but hasn't finished the rest of the build yet. The most important structural work is done, but the house still has exposed wiring, unfinished rooms, a roof that isn't sealed. Nobody would call that house complete just because the foundation is solid. The first arrival, in this account, is the foundation. Everything still groaning and breaking down around us is the unfinished part of the build. Second, to judge. This is the part most people don't like talking about, so let's be careful with it. The same arrival that's described as rescue for some people is described as a reckoning for others. The same sunrise that warms one person can blind another, depending on which direction they're facing. One ancient letter states plainly that this figure is the one who judges both the living and the dead. Notice the tone that's supposed to go with that statement. It is not celebration. It is not satisfaction. It's described with weight, almost sobriety. Anyone who reads that part and feels excited about other people facing judgment has misunderstood the point entirely. It helps to think about how a courtroom actually feels in real life, not in a movie. Nobody walks out of a real courtroom cheering when a serious judgment gets handed down, even when the judgment is fair, even when it's deserved. There's a heaviness to it, a stillness in the room. That's closer to the tone this passage is reaching for than anything resembling triumph. This is also where it's worth being honest about something easy to get wrong. A judgment described with this much weight isn't meant to be used as a weapon against other people, the way it sometimes gets used online or in arguments. The original tone is closer to grief than to victory. Anyone walking away from this part of the story feeling superior to someone else has likely missed the point the writers were trying to make. Third, and this is the part that surprises people most,